How does a 14-year-old kid become a savage hitman who kills several people in the worst way that ever exists? Get ready for a riveting and heartbreaking journey as we dive into the horrific and tragic story of Edgar Jimenez Lugo, aka El Panchis, the child sicario who terrorized Mexico's streets. However, how could someone so young come to be an illustration of such horror? Prepare to be stunned as we reveal the shocking truth behind his brutal and lethal methods. Before we dive into details of how he killed his victims, let's start with his earlier life, so you understand how this young man's life was messed up from a young age, even before he became a drug cartel hitman. He was born in San Diego, US, and grew up in a dysfunctional family. Edgar was taken by Child Protective Services workers after tests reportedly detected cocaine in his bloodstream at his birth. His parents were both crack addicts who frequently had run-ins with the law. They were also undocumented migrants, which only increased the uncertainty in young Edgar's life. Eventually, when he was a baby, his grandmother on his father's side applied for and was granted custody. He would later move with her to Mexico, specifically the state of Morelos. Although things weren't always easy, Edgar's grandmother enrolled him in a nearby school and did what she could to support him. He lived in a house full of adults, including his grandmother, father, aunt, and uncle, as well as his 5 siblings. At first, it appeared that Edgar was on the right track. He had perfect attendance at school, was a quick learner, and was a very good student. However, things would soon change when Julio de Jesus Hernandez, Edgar's older sister's new boyfriend, met the family. On the outside, Julio seemed to be a prosperous, polite man, but as you can probably guess, this wasn't the case. Instead, Julio became friends with Edgar, bought him gifts, and treated him like a younger sibling, which led Edgar to view Julio as a role model. In reality, Edgar was being prepared to join the Cartel del Pacifico Sur. Julio, also known as El Negro on the streets, was a high-ranking member of the criminal drug cartel. The South Pacific Cartel, also known as the Cartel del Pacifico Sur, was established by Hector Beltran-Leyva in April 2010 because of the breakdown of the original Beltran-Leyva organization. Originally, the Beltran-Leyva clan consisted of 5 brothers: Arturo, Alfredo, Alberto, Hector, and Carlos. They began their criminal careers by climbing the ranks of the Sinaloa cartel to become prominent leaders within the organization, rubbing shoulders with figures like El Chapo and El Mayo. However, in early 2008, the Beltran-Leyva brothers' connection with the Cartel de Sinaloa would deteriorate, causing them to split up and later go to war with their former bosses. The divide is caused by the capture of Alfredo Beltran-Leyva, aka Melmochamo. Authorities arrested him on January 20, 2008. The arrest of Alfredo infuriated the remaining brothers, especially Arturo, aka El Jefe de Jefes, or the Boss of Bosses. Under the influence of coke and paranoia, he ordered the murder of Edgar Eusebio Milan Gomez, the commissioner of the federal police, and other important federal figures in the capital city of Mexico, who was shot by a Beltran-Leyva gunman. Arturo soon suspected that the arrest of his brother Alfredo was a setup and that none other than El Chapo was responsible. The rumor goes that El Chapo gave away Alfredo's location to the police in exchange for one of his son's freedom. The Beltran-Leyva brothers would later split from the Sinaloa cartel and wage a bloody war of attempted retribution, which ultimately wouldn't go well for the Beltran-Leyva organization. As you already guessed, the Sinaloa cartel is very powerful. The conflict between the BLO and the Sinaloa cartel would be particularly severe, with horrific execution videos posted online and open acts of murder, including leaving dismembered bodies in the streets. However, going back to Edgar Jimenez Lugo, also known as El Panchis, it is believed that El Panchis fully incorporated into the South Pacific Cartel by the age of 12. At that point, he would stop attending school altogether after the arrival of Julio de Jesus Hernandez, and it became harder for his grandmother to keep an eye on him as she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. After the death of his grandmother, Alpanchis and other youths were dedicated to distributing cocaine to drug dealers in the state of Morelos. They were essentially drug mules. Although this wasn't the full extent of Alpanchi's involvement with the cartel, allegedly he can also be seen present in 2 execution videos. Though he doesn't participate in the killings on film, it is believed that he killed at least 4 rival cartel members from his little age of 11 to 14. Crazy, right? Alpanchi's reign of terror came to its end in 2010 at the age of 14 when he was captured by Mexican authorities. His arrest received widespread media coverage, raising awareness of the problem of child soldiers and the terrible repercussions they experience. He was arrested in 2010 on charges of possessing exclusive military weapons and for his involvement in kidnappings, torture, and killings. Jimenez confessed to killing 4 individuals while getting paid $200 per week and acting in such a way out of fear for his life. He also acknowledged doing so to the police. He was found guilty of these offenses. He had photos of further victims on a phone, and some of his alleged crimes were uploaded to YouTube. However, due to his age at the time, he was only tried at a state court because Mexico has no system to try minors at the federal level. The subsequent legal proceedings presented challenging questions about the responsibility and rehabilitation of children implicated in such horrible crimes. According to Mexican law, Lugo was given the highest term that can be given to a minor, 3 years in prison. In July 2011, Edgar received a 3-year sentence, the maximum allowed under the circumstances, for the crimes of deliberate homicide, firearm possession, kidnapping, and organized crime in accordance with the justice law for adolescents of the state of Morelos, and was housed with 120 other prisoners in a facility in Morelos called the Center for the Execution of Precautionary Measures for Adolescents, CEMPLA, half of whom had been admitted for federal offenses like drug possession, marijuana, cocaine, or drug transportation. Edgar received counseling and education in addition to therapy. In Perez Gomez's words, he arrived illiterate, started learning the vowels and the alphabet, and ended up writing and reading short words, because he did not have enough time to complete his schooling. Despite the fact that trades are taught to inmates at CEMPLA, Jimenez Lugo preferred athletics, especially football. Additionally, it was stated that Jimenez began reading while serving his sentence. The governor of the Mexican state of Morelos responded that Lugo's chances of leading a lawful life in the future had been notable when asked about it. The Interior Secretary for Morelos, though, wasn't as sure, telling the AP that it would be dangerous to say if he had been rehabilitated. He said that I wouldn't actually dare to say it because of the awful his offenses appeared to be. Jimenez became a media star at the time due to his youth, frightening Mexico and the rest of the world into realizing the extent to which the country's terrible drug war was consuming its youth. Officials chose to send him back to the United States because they were worried for his safety, according to press reports. In a series of tweets, Jorge Messenger, Secretary of the Morelos State Administration, verified the specifics of Jimenez's release. The precise day and hour that Alpanchis would be released was only known by 3 people. According to Messenger, the child was freed in the morning and was now relocating to the United States, in his country of origin. When Edgar was about 17 years old, he was released in December 2013. He was transferred to San Antonio to live with relatives after his release because he has no outstanding charges in the United States. According to the little information that is available, he has not committed any new offenses since his release. The day before his release, Rosala Martinez Leon, the execution judge, paid him a visit. Unaware that it would be their final talk, she gave him a few things for personal use and said him farewell. Later, his family and therapist paid him visits. Edgar never found out when he was going to leave, says Ana Virginia Perez Gomez, but there was a kind of farewell from the judge who was always in contact with him and with the family. Alpanchi's story frequently appeared in the Morelos newspaper. The magistrate claimed, making his case, to be overexposed in the media. In a case that stunned even a nation so accustomed to violence, a young hitman who spent nearly 3 years in a juvenile detention center in Mexico for crimes like murder, kidnapping, and cocaine trafficking was deported to the United States. The suspect's aircraft had left for the United States, according to police, said a Mexican security officer who wanted to remain unnamed. He stated that Jimenez, who is now 17 and moving to San Antonio, Texas, had been granted early release due to excellent behavior. The official further stated that he was expected to be moved to a rehabilitation center in Texas. El País claims that concerns that Jimenez could be assassinated by gang members are a contributing factor in the idea. The publication reports that 12 additional youth who had left the juvenile system had died in the previous 2 years. The Los Angeles Times quotes Messenger as saying that Jimenez's next move will be a trip to a support center in the country. It is believed that he has family in Texas. American officials said they are aware of the teen's release, but are unable to discuss specifics about his future owing to his safety concerns. As we conclude our exploration of Al Panchi's life, remember that his story is not an isolated incident. His story serves as a haunting reminder of the dark side of humanity and the urgent need for measures to protect children from the clutches of organized crime. But as we reflect on this harrowing narrative, let us ask ourselves, how can we prevent the exploitation of vulnerable children in the future? What steps can we take to break the cycle of violence and offer a path of redemption for those caught in its grip? It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths and challenges us to work towards a world where innocence is safeguarded actively and children are shielded from the horrors of violence. Thanks for joining us in raising awareness, supporting organizations dedicated to rehabilitating child soldiers, and advocating for policies that prioritize the well-being of our youth. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.